Thank you again for joining the webinar. We will have 3 short presentations today, followed by time for questions and answers. First, we will have Tyler Stubbs and Julie Tack from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources discuss their Fish Local campaign. Tyler is Iowa's statewide community fishing biologist. His focus is to promote and enhance fishing opportunities and increase fishing participation in urban centers within the state by building sustainable partnerships between Iowa and city governments. Julie is a communications and marketing specialist for Iowa. She has experience with strategic planning, market research, campaign development, promotional writing, public relations, and much more. So with that, I will turn it over to Tyler and Julie.
Hi, everybody. We're really excited to be here today. And we are going to present to you our Fish Local campaign, which we facilitated in the spring of 2018. And in Iowa, we have been doing different marketing programs to increase fishing participation and improve license sales for more than 15 years now. And so we're constantly looking for ways to improve our programs. And we have our new program, our community-based fisheries management program that Tyler's going to also talk about today. And we saw a really exciting opportunity to match our marketing efforts with this new program. So next slide. The goals of our Fish Local campaign were, just as we just were talking about, were to improve angling opportunities and access in our urban areas, increase license purchases, establish better relationships with stakeholders and city leaders, and then connect our fisheries management, education, and marketing efforts in a unified effort. And Iowa is a state that has had an increasing urban population over the last several years. And because of that, we have hired Tyler a couple of years ago to be our community fisheries biologist. And with that, I'll hand it over to Tyler.
Yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. So the community fishing program has been built on enhancing and increasing fishing opportunities within city limits. And we've been doing that by working with cities on stormwater retention basins and piggybacking off of the construction of those and making those sustainable fisheries and stocking those with bass, bluegill, and catfish. We've got 2 cities in the Des Moines area, in particular, Ankeny and Waukee, rank in the top 15 in the nation, fastest growing zip codes in the country. So very fast growing cities, lots of development, and with the development comes the construction of these retention basins. The Des Moines Metro boasts about 111 public fisheries within the city limits. We've got just shy of 450 statewide city-owned ponds. So a lot of opportunities out there. Next slide, please. Our target audience was these casual anglers with families in the 10 communities in the Des Moines Metro. And so these are the 10 direct suburbs to the city of Des Moines. If you're not familiar, the city of Des Moines is that big block right in the middle without a star on it. So this outer fringe, each one of these cities is seeing quite a bit of economic growth and population growth. So this was where we're seeing a lot of young families. For instance, Bondurant, which is a city on there, has an average age of a resident of like 27. And so they're very young communities, and that's who we're looking to target. Next slide, please.
So with our campaign, we did an integrated campaign with lots of different components because we wanted to test and see what strategies would work the best. So this is just a quick overview, and then we'll go into more details. But the first slide here is our digital strategy, which included social media. We had paid ads, but also content and Facebook Live sessions. We also did some banner ads on some websites and pre-roll video. Those are those ads that stream before you watch like a YouTube video on a website. We had our own webpage as sort of a hub, and then we did some email blasts. Next slide, please. And we partnered that with some more traditional methods. We did a mailed postcard, some magazine ads with some local targeted magazines that are produced for every one of these communities. And then we also did signage at several ponds in the metro, and we did events and clinics. Next slide. So getting down into some of the results and some more specifics, during our campaign timeframe, we ran several social media paid ads, and this shows you some of the examples of the things that we did. And as you can see from our results, that we drove more than 3,400 referrals from our Facebook, our DNR Facebook page, to our Fish Local webpage, reached more than 41,000 people, and had more than 2,800 click-throughs on the ads. Next slide, please. And then we also have been at the DNR very successful with Facebook Live video. We have an award-winning producer of these videos on our staff who just does really great things as far as really connecting people on our Facebook page with these videos. And I'm going to hand it over to Tyler because he was the star in a couple of these. So go ahead and talk about what happened.
Yeah, these Facebook Lives are really cool. We did 2 of these during the campaign. We do quite a few fishing ones throughout the year. It's a good chance for interaction. This one here looks like we had a little over 200 comments on it. Each one of them went anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000 views. And so there's a lot of interaction with the public, a lot of people asking where we were at and what we were fishing for. And I think those get a lot of great reactions from the public, and they work well. Next slide, please. So with our city partnerships, we also sent them an information packet on the marketing campaign that we were working on, and whether they could or could not directly post DNR materials. A couple of them had policies against posting other entity material. We just asked them, hey, can you post something at least fishing related? And each city did that, and some more than one time, some multiple times. You can see the Betterment Foundations, bait shops, they started to pick up on it. And so we started to see kind of this fishing following on social media that that we weren't directly behind, which was kind of nice to see our partners pick that up. Next slide, please. And it was all driving them to the Fish Local webpage. So that webpage on our website had hot spots. So each pond was listed individually, as well as this Google map, the Community Fishing Atlas. During the campaign, it hit a little over 14,000 views. Currently, it's just shy of 70,000 after a year, and so it gets a lot of use and a lot of traffic. We've also got your first fish certificate, and some of the campaign materials and web ads that we used during this campaign are also on there as well for people to view. So it's become a very popular website, popular page on our website that we still try to drive as much traffic to as we can.
And it also has a button for buy your license on that
Correct.
page. So.
Next slide, please. And signage. When I meet with cities individually, signage is always a concern, both from a public fishing standpoint and a regulation standpoint. And the same thing goes for the anglers. They are unaware of where they can and cannot fish, and if there are rules and regulations, specifically with new or novice anglers not knowing whether or not that stuff even exists. And so having signage at each one of these ponds has been met with welcome arms by each one of these cities. We cost shared with the cities on that, and no complaints. The signs are very attractive, and the regulations are easily spelled out. They're very simple. So the signage is one thing that the cities really like to promote as well. Next slide, please. And then programs and events. We mentioned at the beginning we would like to see a unified message involving programs. We did have the city of Johnston had a summer seasonal position that did a lot of outdoor recreation, and it wasn't just fishing. It also coupled in outdoor cooking, hiking, archery, and also reached out to some of the nearby suburbs as well. And then we've received some Vamos a Pescar grants in the past. We've got a large outdoor expo and free fishing weekend. A lot of those events were pushed through that Fish Local page is how people were finding out about that. Next slide, please.
So then on with more of our marketing strategies, we partnered with a local television station to explore alternative digital strategies beyond just our own Facebook and social media outlets. and this television station has a really large email database, and they targeted specific information within their local Des Moines television station, and so they targeted our community specifically and put in some different criteria, and they also put banner ads on their web pages. And so this gives you an idea of our click-through rates, and some things were more successful than others. I would say the email blast was more successful than the digital ads that we used here. So next slide. And then one of the exciting things that we did is we actually went back to pretty traditional, and we did a customized postcard. What was a little different is we used a variable data platform to print these postcards. So everybody within those 10 communities, we pulled from our license database people that had not yet purchased the license in the year 2018 who met our target audience criteria. And then they received a customized postcard with pictures and information about 3 places that they could fish that were close nearby to them in their own community. Next slide. And then we also did 2 email blasts, again, using our Fish Local branding and information. One of those went out on the 23rd of May, and we followed it up with another one on June 13th. And it went to anybody, again, that had not yet purchased a license that was within these communities. You can see we had a really great open rate of 32% on the first one and 25% on the second one, and our click-through rates were excellent as well. Next slide, please. And go ahead and put everything, there we go. Go ahead and click through all the way. So one of the things that we did as far as testing, we had several different treatment groups, and we also had a control. And so our email, we had a certain group of people that only received the email, a certain group that only received the postcard, a group that had, and then a group that had both the postcard and the email treatment. And you can see the percentage of those that purchased in the in the second column there, the middle column, and then the lift compared to control in the third column. And if you know anything about direct mail, this is really excellent, really, really excellent lift. Some of the highest lift that we have ever seen on any campaigns that we have done. And we're pretty excited about it. You can see overall, we just lost our computer, just so you know, and so I can't see the screen now, I'm sorry. But overall, the return on investment was like double what we had invested in those 2 components. Next slide. So our computer screen, I apologize, is black right now. Can you tell me what's on the next slide and I can continue?
It's the email follow-up survey, starting with 50% held fishing. Okay.
So this on the survey, this is just really briefly, it was important to us to also kind of measure and see what people saw as their, okay, we have it again, thank you. What people saw and what they were responding to. And this gives you overall trends of what people were reacting to. The one caveat I'll have on this survey is we did it only by email, so it makes a lot of sense that the biggest thing that people remembered was the email. That skews it a little bit, but our goal was just to look at overall trends and see if people were tracking with other things. We were glad to see that the postcards also were things people were saw as relevant, and just overall, 63% of the people that received the survey, that responded to the survey, said they had seen at least one form of the marketing efforts that we had done. And 77% had fished at a local pond. So lessons learned, we feel like this localized, customized information really is effective. We think that doing the combination of email and postcards was effective as well, and emails on their own also work. I think we've all known that for quite a while. Social media strategies promote engagement at a very low cost, And when we say that, we mean our own social media on our DNR page. We have a great following on our Facebook page and feel like it's really well supported with our other social media outlets like Instagram and Twitter. And we kind of felt like the television partnership of doing the banner ads was not probably worth the financial investment that we put into it. We were glad to give it a try, but if we were to reinvest those dollars, we would probably put it more back into the email postcards and the social media strategy. And finally, and probably most importantly, we're super excited about the partnerships that we've created with these cities. Tyler has just done an outstanding job of making himself accessible and getting to know these communities, and they're all a little unique, so it takes some time and investment to make that effective, but it's definitely something that going down the road is going to pay dividends in terms of really increasing participation and making fishing more accessible in our state. And with that, last slide.
Oh, yeah. So, so even though we think we're doing a really good job, sometimes we still, we mess up with communication a little bit. This was sent, I actually saw this on Facebook first, and then it was sent to me by quite a few different people. It had to do with an ice fishing regulation. One of the things with here in Iowa is we deal with ice fishing. Some cities allow it, some cities don't. And so this particular city was going through an ordinance change where they were going to end up allowing it, but currently they did not. So for a couple days, they threw this no fishing sign up, and it caused a lot of confusion, but we got it all figured out. So sometimes communication is key. So, and I think that's all we got. Do we have another slide, Joanne?
That's it for Iowa.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you both very much. Really appreciate it. Next, we have Teresa Stabo, our R3 coordinator with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Their Wisconsin Angler R3 program sprang from their angler education that Teresa helped create back in 1987. They wanted to determine the effectiveness of this Angler R3 marketing efforts, so Teresa wrote a proposal for the RBFF R3 grant. So with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa.
Great, thanks very much. Yep, I'm excited to share this report here. That was really a collection of work from Carl Scheidegger and my other colleague, Ben Beardmore. We worked together on this. Carl's work here, you can see he put together the report, and then I think he went on vacation. But I don't, is this the way this is supposed to set up like
Sorry,
this?
we're trying to get into presentation mode, but just having a few technical difficulties right now.
Okay.
We're working on it.
All right, very good. Right, so we had a campaign. We wanted to, should I keep going or should I wait?
Yeah, if you want to mind, continue to go and we'll work on this.
Okay, you'll work on it. All right, so we had an email marketing campaign that went out to Wisconsin's first-time buyers and our lapsed anglers. We wanted to find out what kind of messaging would work best to keep them in the fold, keep them purchasing their licenses. So we wanted to find out, is this really the best strategy? So next slide, please. Yeah, and next slide. So we were looking at the first-time buyers, those who had purchased the discounted first-time buyer license in 2016. That's a $5 license. It's also available to people who have not purchased a license within the last 10 years. So it's kind of like a come on back incentive to get people to come back. That was the idea anyway. And then the lapsed anglers, those who purchased one license in 2006 or 7 and 16, but not in 2017. And that was a wide age group for the lapsed anglers. That could have been anywhere from 18 to 75 years old. Next slide, please. So we had essentially 4 groups. We had 2 controls, one for the first-time buyer and one for the lapsed angler, and a group for the treatments, the 2 treatment groups were first-time buyers again and lapsed anglers. So we used our Go Wild licensing system as a means to collect those addresses, those email addresses. And Ben Beardmore, our research statistician, he was the person who kind of determined the size of the group, what would be the best size. Next slide, please. So we had two main themes here. We had the millennials. We wanted to find out what kinds of messaging and images appealed to the millennials and what appealed to boomers, those older lapsed anglers. So the one on the left is considered, was the millennial version, and that was where we're wanting to get people to think about independence, challenge, the excitement of fishing. And then the one for boomers, the thought there was to really focus more on family and nostalgia. So the treatment groups, they each got both messages. That is, some millennials got the one that we would think would appeal more to the boomers and vice versa. And it seemed that the one that was targeting the boomers did indeed appeal more to the older lapsed anglers, but the one that was designed to target millennials, that one seemed to appeal to everybody. And I have to say, when I look at them myself, they, and I am a boomer, they appeal. I can see how both would have equal appeal no matter the audience. A slight increase for the older lapsed anglers. Next slide, please. We also sent out newsletters and within the emails, different emails. And it didn't seem like all that added content really added value. It was just too much information. People really didn't click through all that. With the exception of one newsletter that had the buy your license message, everything else was the same content. So that the buy your license message was sent to the lapsed millennials and angler and boomer groups. Otherwise, everything else was the same. But again, it really didn't seem to have a whole lot of impact. And those, next slide, please. The schedule for this was to send them out before the opener and then after, just to 3 emails out before the fishing opener, and then the 4th one came afterwards. Okay, next slide, please. So these are the results here. We have we saw a 3.5% lift, or an average of a 4% lift. So that not a whole lot of difference, not a wide difference between all of the different methods between the newsletter or just the straight email. Pretty much, roughly the same within a fraction of a percentage points for each of them. So that was the lift we saw. The increase in license sales ranged from about 17% to 23% for those different groups. And these, the lift here that we show here, that's pretty much in line with the Georgia study that we were sort of modeling our study after as well. Next slide, please. And again, similar, the newsletter really had a less of an impact, just as we mentioned before, just not even quite 2%, but in terms of the difference between the control and the people who received a message. But all of that combined, the lift translated to about $86,000 in our coffers. It really did increase some license sales overall. Next slide, please. So we wanted to find out, well, what can we do to improve our results? So we consulted with a marketing firm, Filament, to analyze our messaging. We wanted to find out what can we tweak? Next slide, please. And they came up with these recommendations, just the content, appropriate subject lines, concise messaging, and just evaluate audience variability. Sometimes we need to make sure that the messages are mobile friendly and that we had consistent branding. Okay, next slide, please. So what else can we do here? The subject lines. So it seemed what Filament told us was that don't start with buy, buy, buy. Sell the experience first. Tell people when you go out fishing, this is what it's going to be like. This is the fun you're going to have. This is the time to rise to the challenge of catching that fish. So sell the experience first, and then talk to them about how they can buy a license. Next slide, please. Another recommendation was to reduce the audience variability. It seemed between our different methods, the different age groups, there really wasn't a huge generational difference in the reaction to our messages. So just have one audience, combine our messaging and just to have one audience. Next, please. And then using UTMs, we are going to be looking at that. We did, Carl is using UTMs for 2019, but the results are pending for that. We need to, we want to see if we can sort of put a beacon on email recipients and track, does their behavior with regard to the emails we send to them, does that translate to a purchase? So when we were looking at this list here, where is the traffic coming from? The traffic would be the purchasers or the anglers. Where are these anglers coming from? Or the potential anglers, how are they getting here? And then what brought them to Go Wild, the place where they're going to click and purchase a license online. Next slide, please. And this is a little bit more on the UTM. So the content is that message over there on the right is the email itself, and then the next step, the Go Wild, that's the place that we want them to go. All right, next slide, please. So like I mentioned a moment ago, the results for 2019 are pending. Ben pulled an email list, gathered all the emails together from Go Wild, and Carl sent the emails, but we won't have those numbers until the end of the season. People could still buy a license in February. The license calendar ends in March sometime, but there's still time for a few more people to get out there and purchase a license. And then, okay, next slide, please. And this is the general marketing campaign that Carl pretty much manages. But over, you can see that red block there. That's how we ran the email marketing campaign, and that's kind of divided by, we can sort them by age and gender and zip code to see where people are coming from. So that might tell us a little bit more about some of our anglers or potential anglers, future anglers. Okay, and that is the end of that slide, of that presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Teresa.
You're welcome.
We'll now hear from Ed Herndon, the R3 coordinator for the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. Ed came to DGIF with the background in marketing and previously worked to grow youth hunting programs across the country. Ed will now update us on their Refer a Friend program. Go ahead, Ed.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Ed Herndon here from the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. Just wanted to give a shout out to RBFF for helping to support this campaign through a grant and some internal help from Renee Valdez, Doreen Richmond, and Darren Moore for their support in this campaign. So, all right, let's get started. Next slide. So really the goal of Refer a Friend is to motivate and incentivize current anglers to introduce new people to fishing and to participate with them. The objectives for this campaign are pretty simple. We want to increase new customers measured through license sales, increase fishing participation throughout the campaign, and then also increase our knowledge and understanding of the participants through follow-up surveys. And this also includes understanding the motivations of the current anglers to participate and how well our incentives affected their behavior to send someone a referral code. Next slide. So the business practice of referring a friend is pretty common these days, and it works because the offer or call to action is delivered to a potential customer by someone that they know or trust rather than a business. So the methodology behind this campaign was to utilize this practice in an effort to recruit new anglers and also to really discover what incentives would inspire our current anglers to help us recruit new people. So we worked closely with Brand Information Systems to develop the process for customers to generate and send their referral codes, which is what you see now on the screen. And it essentially works as if you send the code and the person who received the code creates a new account and uses it at checkout to buy a fishing license. Then this would trigger both the referrer and referee to receive a gift. Next slide. So in 2018, we developed a custom hat that you see there featuring the tagline, Stewards of the Outdoors. Along with that free hat, we also included a 10% off coupon to a local sporting goods store. And lastly, there was also an opportunity for them to capture their experiences with a new angler through an Instagram photo contest, which would then enter them into a chance to win even more prizes. So these were the incentives to get them to take action and send their referral codes. Next slide, please. So how we promoted it, our target audience was obviously our current anglers. So our biggest tool for reaching this audience was through our email newsletter for fishing, which reached over 130,000 subscribers in June of 2018, and then 186,000 in July. We also did some traditional advertising, Blue Ridge Outdoors Magazine, Woods and Waters, and an ad in our Hunting Regulations Digest, as well as some social media posts. In the future, we are going to analyze, some part of this campaign was analyzing the results of this, which helped inform our strategy for 2019, but we also need to add tracking links so we can better measure the impact of our print media, which is something that's important for any campaign. Next slide, please. So the results from June to August 2018, over 1,000 total codes were generated, which resulted in over 420 new customer accounts, new orders, which totaled nearly $13,000 in net revenue, with most of that coming directly from email. Next slide. So to evaluate this effort, it consisted of a post-campaign survey to program participants, so both the referrers and referees. And really, we wanted to understand the relationship between these two parties. their motivations for participating, their own fishing practices and preferences, if the current anglers had previously introduced people to fishing, if they fish socially, the species that they target, etc. And many of these questions actually came from our previous statewide Virginia Angler Survey. So in the future, we hope that we can compare these results with the results from our statewide Angler Survey and get some more information. Our program evaluation focused mainly on short-term outcomes because we really wanted to be able to adapt and improve this program over the next few years that we run it. They were also designed to help determine if participants went fishing as a result of the program, which is one of our objectives, which is increasing participation. So in the future, to measure potential differences between the participants of this campaign and non-participants, our hope is to supplement our analysis of the survey results with our license database information. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to go over some of those results of our surveys and talk about some of the big takeaways from this. So the first question we asked are about the motivations for our current anglers to participate in this campaign. The highest rated motivations for participation were introducing someone to fishing and recruiting someone to go fishing with. The actual rewards themselves were a much lower motivation than I initially thought, but it's definitely an important part, obviously, because that's what triggered them to take action in the first place. Next slide. We also asked specifically about what rewards would be most appealing to them if we had run this again. And fishing, tackle, or bait were kind of the things that were most appealing to this group. And a key lesson that we learned for the future was that the current anglers preferred a product with fishing utility, something that they could use rather than a free hat or a t-shirt. So that's something that we took into account for this year. Next slide. So it is a refer a friend program, and which means that most people actually did send their codes to their friends, which is good to hear, followed by adult family members, then significant others, and finally younger family members. And to me, this kind of shows that people sent their codes to people that they're more likely to actually go fishing with. They did this because not just because they wanted their friend to buy a license, but they wanted to actually go out with them. And we saw that in the next question. If you go to the next slide, please. When we asked them about fishing together. And the majority of the current anglers, the people that generated the codes, 67% reported that they had fished with the person they sent their code to. And another 28% reported that they did intend to fish with that person they sent the code to. So that was good to see. Next slide. So to get into the background of the person that they sent their code to, code refers reported that very few of the receivers were completely inexperienced anglers, only about 10%. Half of the referrers reported that code receivers had recently fished. And I'm going to talk about this later, but this result revealed an important revelation when it comes to a referral program, is that this may be better served as a reactivation vehicle rather than a true recruitment. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. Next slide. So our survey to the newer anglers was obviously limited in our analysis based on the number of results we got, which was low. But we asked similar questions that we did to the current anglers. And in terms of their motivations, the chance to fish socially was the most important motivation for participating in this program. Again, the importance of their participation was more based on the experience rather than just receiving a free gift item. Next slide. Over half of reported that they had fished while growing up, and only 8% reported that they had never fished before. So similar to our other survey results, this indicates that our intended outcome of recruiting new anglers was possibly overshadowed by an outcome of reactivation of lapsed anglers. Next slide. And then similar to the results for the current anglers, a majority of the new anglers, the new customers, I should say, reported that they had gone fishing since receiving the code, which again points to our intended outcome of increasing participation, getting people to actually go out and fish together. It seems like we had definitely accomplished that with this campaign. Next slide, please. All right, so one of the, obviously the intended outcomes of this campaign was to recruit new anglers. And what actually happened is that most code redeemers were lapsed anglers or recent anglers that had not purchased a license or had an account in our Go Outdoors system. Angler reactivation may represent the most important R3 objective for referral rewards programs. Lapsed anglers require less training than new anglers require and are more likely to demonstrate enthusiasm about fishing. The rewards for the angler referral program was a much lower motivation for participation, but a reward is still very important and a key part in initiating and triggering those current anglers to actually take action and participate. Another key lesson learned was that the current anglers preferred a product with fishing utility, and in the short term, we've already changed that reward to a product that these anglers can actually use. Another takeaway from this campaign, which I want to get more information on, but it's something that we found, was that over half of the new anglers were female. So to us, if this recruitment and reactivation effort can be sustained, it seems like this type of program would represent an effective R3 program for women. And then finally, email seems to be the most effective method for generating action. And it makes sense as this is mostly a digital campaign. Most of the call to action is through digital means. So in the future, we're definitely going to use that to inform our efforts to promote the program next year as well. Next slide, please. So some future things we have in mind for this. Evaluating this program should continue at regular intervals to determine if participants, especially the new participants, repurchase licenses in the future. So our plan is to analyze these participants over time and use that data to improve retention of anglers. We need to develop a better strategy for this, but right now our new customers are being put into our email system and will be receiving regular fishing-specific email newsletters. And with Variance, we also have built-in retention tools such as automatic email license reminders that will hopefully increase the chances that they buy again in the future. To measure the impact of these programs on retention, I think what we can also do is use our license sales database and use that to see if if participating in this program improves their retention over time. A direct change from 2018 to our current Refer a Friend program, which is going on right now, was a higher emphasis on using paid social media ads to promote the program. And as of today, we've definitely seen a larger increase in referral codes being generated, and we believe that our use of paid Facebook ads is a big reason for this, as well as greater rewards. I think that has shown to that is shown to create more participation as well. This year we partnered with Pure Fishing to offer plastic bait, plastic worms as the referral gift. So in 2019, I'm happy to report we're over 605 codes have been generated, and our net revenue is over $18,000. And the campaign is still going on. So 2019 has already seen improvements from last year. And be on the lookout again for another Refer a Friend hunting campaign, which is going to launch this fall. Be targeted to our current hunters, and we've actually partnered with a game spice company to offer participants a jerky kit for every person that they successfully refer to buy a hunting license. So that's exciting as well. And that is all I have. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And thanks to Tyler, Julie, and Teresa as well.